Tears of the Kingdom has finally arrived and has been absolutely phenomenal in almost every way. But one thing I think many can agree upon is how clunky and awkward the champion abilities are. In this video, I'm going to be presenting a method the Zelda team could use to fix this issue. That is, what they could change about the implementation of it to make the champion abilities work quite well. First, I'm going to be breaking down all the issues with this system as I see them. Then we'll discuss my proposed solution, in which I feel will solve all of it. So just as a heads up, beware for minor spoilers regarding the champion abilities. The largest contributor comes down to the way that the abilities are activated, as you have to be standing by them and press A to activate the ability. Due to the AI, they're constantly moving around, sometimes charging at the enemy, and other times sticking close to you. Here's just a couple of examples of the ways this can be problematic. Riju might charge in, so you would run in after her, but before you can activate the ability, she does a sick backflip and evades you, leaving you exposed, closer to the enemy than you'd like, and the ability still isn't active. While against weaker enemies like this Lizalfos here, that isn't a big deal, but against a Lionel or a tougher enemy, chasing down other champions is hazardous, frustrating, and ineffective. Even outside of combat, this can be problematic. I've personally had Tulin pop up behind me as I was looting just to wind tunnel valuable monster parts off the nearest cliff. Yunobo is insufferable as he's just begging you to throw him off into the distance anytime you board a vehicle. I think you get the picture, but there are other issues besides the method of activation as well. Another thing is just the visual noise of having several champions out at once. It can be super off-putting out of combat, but in combat it can really get in the way. It's just too much visual noise and chaos at all times, especially when you have 3 or more out. And because of this, I usually try to limit myself to 2 or 3, but, you know, even that's too much at times. Building off of this, they can also make combat easier than you may want it to be, so you're forced between not being able to use their abilities or making combat easier. It is good to have the option to make it easier, especially for the younger audience, but it shouldn't be mandatory. So you might be thinking, why not just turn them off and on as needed? And you can certainly do this, but with all the menu scrolling to swap armor, restore health, and anything else that you might be doing, it can be a pain to constantly pop into the menu to summon them or dismiss them. And it isn't something that you want to have to do in the middle of combat either. Hopping into those menus all the time can really take you out of combat and can kind of kill the encounter a bit, so just removing as much of that as you can would really be a benefit. So there it is. At least all the issues that I see, put pretty simply and plainly. So here's what I think Nintendo should do to fix it. The solution to this, I feel, would be to put the champion abilities on their own ability wheel, and here's how that would work. This ability wheel would reside on the same button that you use to bring up your own abilities, but you would press a button to swap between the 2 wheels. So you'd hit left bumper, your ability wheel would pop up, and you just hit Y or something to tab over to the other wheel. All the buttons already cease functioning when a quick menu is active, such as applying filters to arrow fusions. So this should be something that players are both familiar with and should be easy enough for them to implement without any input issues. I think it would also be better to make you tab over each time, as it would be best to have your ability wheel pop up the first time every time, so you're not just constantly tabbing between the 2. But still, this would work tremendously well and alleviate some of the major issues right away. So let me tell you a bit about how this wheel should work. This ability wheel should be the method of activating all of the abilities rather than standing by the champion. So you would just select which one you want to activate, and it would activate that way, rather than having to go run over to them and press A. You would also be able to see the recharge by pulling up the wheel as well. This would instantly alleviate the largest issue with the champion abilities, and would immediately make it much more usable both in and out of combat, with the exception of maybe Tulin's ability. This way, you could activate any champion ability just like your own at any time, regardless of if the champion was summoned or not. And speaking of summoned champions, this wheel would also manage the summoning and dismissal of them. This would also make it more practical to turn them off and on, as you would still be able to manage which ones are active in the menu, but you wouldn't need to pop into the menu each time to summon them or dismiss them. So for instance, you could summon all the ones that you have selected, or dismiss them through that option, or you could also summon all of them or dismiss all of them. This way you could turn them on and off without having to pop into your menu, which would sometimes take you out of the combat experience. So I was putting it pretty simply, trying to get through it quick enough. So I hope I explained it all well enough, but this simple additional wheel implemented in the manner I've described would alleviate a lot of the issues that I see with the champion abilities. I know that implementing this solution probably wouldn't be the most easy thing to do, but I think it would be a huge boon for the game, as it would solve a lot of the issues with the champion abilities. At least I think so. So let me know what you think in the comments below. Thanks for your time and for hearing me out.